Today, we are going to be talking about cash flow and budgeting. Welcome back to Tax Talk. I am Patrick Best, the tax attorney at Best Tax Solutions. This is a continuation episode, so if you have not seen the main episode, I will put the link in the description. Please feel free to watch that first. With me today, again, is Joanne Leisure from Day One Accounting. And today we are going to be talking about cash flow and budgeting. So Joanne, thank you for joining me again on Tax Talk.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me again.
Yes. So can you talk a little bit about cash flow and budgeting
Sure.
From your perspective? What do you do with businesses for cash flow and budgeting, and why is that important?
Sure. Well, let's start out with budgeting. So, many times I will ask people starting around September of the year before, we should really put a budget together. And I mentioned it in an earlier video. Your budget's not just, that average trying to make sure you don't spend too much. Your budget is going to help you set some goals so that if you wanted to make a certain amount of money through the year, you kind of put it in stone that in January, I'm going to make this, in February, I'm going to make that. And then you're able to go after that. How many widgets do I need to sell in order to get there? So it's very important. The other thing about budgets is that when it comes to accounting, numbers really aren't anything unless you're comparing them to something. So what I like to do is I like to compare your budget versus your actual. And I like to compare it over a year's time so that if we are one quarter of the year through, we need to know what do we need to do in order to reach the goals for the end of the year if we're not on track. Or I can just report to us that, hey, look, we're on track. This is great. Or we're better than on track. So your budget is just so much more than just looking at those expenses. It is telling yourself that I want to make X amount of money for the entire year and actually doing it. So it's a roadmap.
And you mentioned the comparison, and another type of important comparison is that year over year comparison.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In 2018, you did this, and in 2019, you did that. You want to know that you're growing or that you're doing better than you did. And you want to be able to see if you're not doing better, where are the leaks? Where is it that we're not doing better? What happened? Let's tell the story. It's such a really great thing to compare those years or those quarters or those trends. Okay.
Yeah. And some businesses are not very consistent. Either they're seasonal or they just have summer's better for them and winter's worse or whatever it may be. So sometimes we can't say like, okay, well, I want to make $30,000 a month. I only made 20. That's bad.
Right.
You might have some more complexities where you have to do a quarter one comparison to quarter one of last year. So,
right.
So you can, depending on the industry that you're in or the business that you're in, those more detailed comparisons with budgeting can also be important for you because you have to know how to restrict your spending in your down season and how to either save money or use money differently in your good season. So
Right.
that becomes important as well, particularly for businesses that are not consistent month in, month out.
Exactly. And also there's something about budgeting, and that is that, when you have the dream of, I'm going to have 5 employees next year, you need to kind of, wrangle that in a little bit to understand if you can even afford 5 employees and what are they all going to do. So your budget is really something that is useful in deciding whether or not you can afford to have 5 employees. It is, you don't want to be in business just kind of wielding, like just kind of going out there and making, okay, this is what, and it's because it's my dream and I believe in myself, this is actually going to happen. You really want to have a business approach to things, a plan approach to it. And that's what budgets can do. And, a similar thing for cash flow. We talked about it earlier about the cash flow statement versus the cash flow forecast. And with the, when I talk about cash flow, I'm really talking about the forecasting. I mentioned to you that it's just extremely important for certain businesses that are seasonal, or businesses that do expect, that if I'm going to have like a nonprofit, if I'm going to have a church, and I'm depending on those Sundays, and then one of them based on the weather, or in this case the COVID, all of a sudden now my cash flow's changed, right? I need to know that I'm going to be able to sustain the storm. um, and your cash flow forecast can help you, because you have a lot of things that are recurring. And so we start off with the cash flow by knowing what those items are, knowing what's coming out immediately, or automatically, such as your insurances, your car notes, or truck notes, knowing those things. And then we're fitting things in based on maybe the season. We know that, during the seasons of the winter, your utilities may be up. During the season where it's really busy, maybe your telephone bill's up. Maybe your garbage bill's up, all the different things. Maybe your advertising is up, right? It's coming close to Christmas in your retail. And so, in these particular months from August to whenever, November, your advertising is going to be way up. And you need to make sure that you have considered that in the revenue that you're expecting to get. So cash flow forecasting is extremely important. And it's also very useful to you as running a business.
It also does assist us with that growth planning. So you mentioned businesses that are looking and trying to grow next year, because it can come down to small details, like advertising is one good point. You might tell me from a budgeting standpoint, well, you have an extra $2,000 available for advertising. But if we talk to the advertising experts, they may say $2,000 is going to translate into X number of construction projects, whatever your business is. Now we need to know, not only is it the $2,000 on advertising that I need, but there's that cost of each project that becomes important. And you can actually tell them that as well, right? What does a project cost, and how do we know what we need to do to scale a business?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I use the tools that I have in my arsenal. I have a standard of using QuickBooks, and it's very useful in getting all of that information if you know how to use it properly. And so I measure people's projects. I budget for them. We have a cash flow. Remember that when you are a business owner, you're not necessarily spending the money, or I shouldn't say spending, but you're not necessarily paying for the items in the same month. So it's important for you to recognize that, whether you're into construction or you're into event planning, that's a good one, a good example. So if I'm into event planning, I'm selling tickets way before the event actually happens. And then after the event happens, I'm probably paying for everything that happened at the event. So your cash flow is very important, because if your event is in March, you're not paying for everything. Everything's not happening in March. So cash flow is extremely useful in those scenarios.
And project-based businesses. So a couple examples would be like construction's a project-based business. Investment properties. If you purchase an investment property, you renovate the property, you flip the property, that's project-based. If you needed to know not only how's my business doing, but did I make money on this project, that cash flow, that project-based budgeting becomes very important to determine which of your projects were profitable, which mistakes you made, and how you can improve in the future.
Exactly. And then also what you did right. If you
Right.
did it right, you can duplicate it. So it becomes very important.
Right. So like if we were going to use like investment properties as an example, you may know that every time I buy a house in X neighborhood, I lose money. Right.
Yeah.
But Y neighborhood, I make 2X what I invested. Those are the types of things you would want to know if you were buying investment properties.
And the same thing with, we said event planning. That's a project-based business as well. So that that, well, when I throw a Sweet 16, I make this amount of money, but when I throw a wedding, somehow I don't make that money, or vice versa. So yeah, it helps you measure whether or not you even want to continue doing that business, or if you want to change it in some way so that you can monetize it better.
Or change your pricing.
Right. Exactly.
right?
Pricing is
Right. So
extremely a reason why you want to measure your projects.
it
Absolutely.
doesn't necessarily mean you don't do weddings anymore. It just might mean that you're not charging enough for your weddings.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Or if you're doing construction, it might mean that you're underbidding projects because, and you can even potentially point to where the underbid occurred. It might be a particular subcontractor,
Hmm.
right? Like my material bid was fine, but I'm overpaying on the electrician
Hmm.
or whatever component of that may be. All of those different parts come down to your budgeting for projects, your cash flow for these projects, and all of that comes down to bookkeeping.
Yeah, absolutely. You may even find that it's not so much the subcontractors, it's the clientele itself that is costing you money. And so you might want to shift your avatar of a client so that you're getting a better client for that type of work that you do.
Right. Right. And that's all stuff. If you have the building blocks, if you have the right bookkeeping, you can sit with your clients, you can go over any of those data points.
Absolutely. 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 And, again, the fact that, I can walk into a business and we get the whole no like and trust factor. You want me, you want to see me. I get clients who I think sometimes they miss me. They want to actually talk to me. So, and I'm always on the phone with clients. I'm always talking to them and I'm always available to them so that we can kind of talk through things that may not seem obvious that it is bookkeeping related or accounting related. And in the end, it really is, because it's good that I know that these things are going on in the business so that I can advise or remind you. That's the best type of, a professional that you can have by your side is someone who knows a little bit more than the average person who is just kind of doing bookkeeping. So.
Right. Right. It is the key to being a smart business owner, to growing your business, to understanding your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Joanne, thanks again for joining us. If you are interested in looking at any of those other videos that I've done with Joanne, please look in the description. I will put the links below. As always, thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.